Sir, you have to unmute, sir.
Thank you, ma'am. Am I audible now?
Yes, sir.
Okay, sorry, I had not unmuted it. You're right. Okay, now thank you for your brief introduction and inviting me for this session. I welcome all the participants on behalf of IoT as well as personally. Uh, what I am going to do today is I will try to introduce you what Indian knowledge system IKS means to you. It's a very huge subject. That's a disclaimer actually. It's a very huge subject. And within the stipulated time of 1 hour, it's not easy. But still, I'll try my level best to at least give a synopsis of what IKS is to you. Okay, now I will try to present the flowchart of my presentation today. At the beginning, just a minute. At the beginning of this presentation, what I'm going to do is I will not only introduce you to IKS as well as I've used a new method for invocating the session. In this invocation, I have blended the invocation with the IKS. After understanding what IKS is, we will move to a subject how IKS spread all over India and outside India. There, we will try to ascertain what are the factors that IKS faced not only during ancient times but also during modern times. And at the end of the session, we will try to understand certain aspects of IKS, certain subjects which are related with IKS. By that time, we will be at the end of the session, and I will allow you to ask you certain questions on what I have delivered and what I know. Okay, now we will go to the invocation part at the beginning. At the first, what I am going to do is I will just read the invocation. As you know, invocation is a part of our culture. Invocation is not only observed in our culture, it is found in various other cultures too. Invocation is a method wherein we invite a supreme being above us to just guard us or to protect us. Om Purnamadaha Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. This is taken from Isha Upanishad, Ishavasya Upanishad. Basically, it's a Shanti Patam of Isha Upanishad. It is also found in Brihadaranya Upanishad. We should know that there are 108 Upanishads as found in our text, but when we actually count, we have more than 200 Upanishads. The other Upanishads are later Upanishads. Out of these 200 Upanishads, Brihadaranya Upanishad and Isha Upanishad and other 10 Upanishads are very important for us. Amongst this Upanishad, this Isha Upanishad, from where I have taken this particular shloka, is a very small Upanishad. It actually contains only 70 shlokas, excluding this one. This is in the Shanti Patam. Shanti Patam is roughly introduction. So excluding this one, there are only 17 shlokas in that one, and it's one of the smallest but very important Upanishad. While understanding this, we have two different level of meanings. One, as we naturally know, is the literary meaning of this particular shloka, and the second level is metaphysical meaning or philosophical meaning. Metaphysical and philosophical meaning we can easily understand because we are brought up like that way. But I wish to mention an incident that happened in the life of an Englishman. As we know, we were ruled by East India Company, we were colonized by East India Company. For being an officer in East India Company, they were supposed to pass an examination which is reminiscent of our IAS examinations today. And they were trained for that example in the colleges where they studied. There were certain fixed colleges in London and other places where they used to get training. So why I am insisting on this point is, by the time they arrived in India, they had a basic knowledge of not only Sanskrit but Persia. Some amongst them tried to improve their knowledge. And I'm taking an example of one such Englishman. He went to one Pandit somewhere in a village in Bengal, and he wished that he would study Sanskrit under him. So the Pandit, as usual, which is a tradition followed in India, he started with this shloka. This is the first shloka that will be taught for any student. Purnamadaha Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevava Shishyate. As I told you, the Englishman had the basic knowledge of Sanskrit, and he could not understand, as he was not trained in Indian systems or Indian knowledge systems. He couldn't go to that metaphysical or philosophical level. He simply translated it literally, and he simply branded this as a childish, what do you call it, as childish text, and he left studying this one. That is, he discontinued his studies. That happens even to us even today. If we just go through just the literary, that is the situation that we face. Purnamadaha Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate simply says that the word which we are living, the word which is above us is full. If you remove full from full, only full remains. This is what the literary meaning says. But I have given you the metaphysical meaning over there. The other word is the outer word where the divine lives. Divine, here it is not a condition that the divine should be Shiva, the divine should be a Vishnu, not like that way. We have not given any shape to him. It is a supreme being above us. It is left to your choice. They are not enforcing us that the divine or Isha or something word which we use doesn't represent anything. So that is filled in the cosmos or the universe. We are in the inner world, that is the outer world. We are in the inner world. We find completeness in both the worlds. Even that world is complete by the divine presence and divine consciousness of that being. Similarly, our world is full of divine consciousness. So this divine consciousness comes from that divine consciousness. It means that it's very well interconnected. You cannot separate the outer world from the inner world. So Purana is completeness. So if you take away Purana from this word or from that word, still Purana remains. This is what the shloka intends to tell to you. How we can connect this one to the subject that we are going to study here today. It is definitely the part of IKS. Later on, after some centuries, we find the arrival of Advaita philosophy. Advaita philosophy was propagated by Shankaracharya, who clearly mentions that the inner world and the outer world, where that Brahman lives or where we live, are one and the same. So this was known to our ancient saints, and true today. Even the modern researchers, particularly in mathematics and other fields, they say that if you remove infinity from infinity, that's why I've used the word there, infinite. Infinity, if you remove infinity from infinity, still infinity remains. This is what our ancients did. They propagated the knowledge of science and other things to various forms. And at that point, I will come to you in the third slide where I am going to discuss the propagation of IKS. Okay, ma'am, next slide. So we will go to the introduction part. Here also I have made a small change over here. Instead of blindly reading out what IKS means or what is the meaning of IKS, what is the nature of IKS, I have taken the help of psychology, where it is found that giving live examples will be more effective to the listener than simply dictating something. So I have taken two different live examples in different timelines. The first example, the first part of the example, 4 or 5 lines, it belongs to ancient part of the world. And the second part, the example of area study, which I'm going to explain later on, is taken from the modern perspective, 18th, 19th century. So by this, I'm trying to prove that whatever be the timeline, the intention and the introduction is one and the same. Okay. So there, what I have done is actually India colonized many maritime countries in Southeast Asia, which are today's modern Indonesia, Thailand, Java, Bali, Sumatra, Singapore, Malaysia, and other countries. Out of those countries, I have selected the example of Thailand because Indians relate more with Thailand than any other countries. The data of Indian government clearly states that Thailand is full of Indian tourists always. So I have taken that particular example. And moreover, we know clearly that Thailand people follow Buddhism, which went from India. And earlier, before they converted into Buddhism, they were Hindus. And they still regain most of this land, not only Thailand, most of these places still regain the cultural heritage in spite of accepting a new religion. So I've taken the examples of 2 to 3 festivals that are celebrated in Thailand. Thailand is famous for celebrating festival and marketing it for Indians. In a whole year, what they do is they celebrate around 12 to 13 festivals and they market it to Indians so that their tourism industry get boosted over there. So the first example that I have taken is the example of Songkran. Songkran is celebrated in Thailand roughly during 14th or 15th of April. It has come from our Sanskrit word Sankranti. Sankranti is celebrated in India during January, but they celebrate it during April. Why is the difference? Both Songkran and Sankranti represent the astrological passage of sun. What we do is we talk of Makara Sankramana, that is sun entering Makara, that is Makara Sankramana, but they talk of sun leaving Meena, that is Pisces, and entering Aries, Mesha. So the difference of 2 months in between, we celebrate it during January, but they do it during April. But the background behind this one is the astrological passage of sun. This clearly shows that though it is a festival, they knew the moments of sun, and that was celebrated as a festival so that the knowledge is kept within the mind of the people. And reference is found that Sankranti is the oldest festival celebrated in the world, that you can Google it and you can search it over there later on. And the second example that I am going to tell you today is of Loi Krotong. Loi Krotong is similar to our Deepavali. Loi means to float. Krotong is a small boat-shaped instrument that is being made using plantain leaf and plantain plants, that is done over there in Thailand. What they do is during Deepavali festival we celebrate. At the same time, what they do is they float this boat, keeping a small mud light inside it. So this is reminiscent of what we do in Deva Deepavali. Deva Deepavali is usually celebrated in northern part of India after Deepavali. Reference of doing Deva Deepavali in South India, I don't have much information, but in North India, it's a very big festival. And there too, what they do is on that particular evening, they float using paper boats. So that reminiscent is found even in Thailand. And Monkey Buffet Festival is they feed monkey on that particular day. Monkey is a revered god in Hinduism. Though now, as I have said, they are Buddhist, they have kept their cultural part. Okay, now combining all these 3 festivals. Okay, at one level, what we understand is there is a migration between these 2 countries, and as a part of their culture, they still celebrate this festival. But there is more scientific meaning behind this one. It is not just a part of our culture It is not just a part of our religion, it is purely science. How is it possible? That's why I have taken the example of Boita Bandhana. Boita Bandhana is a boat festival that is celebrated in Oriya in India even today. So Boita is boat in their language, and Bandhana has come from the Sanskrit word called Vandana. It is to celebrate. What is the idea behind Boita Bandhana, or what is the relationship between Boita Bandhana and Loi Krotong that is celebrated in Thailand? For that, to understand the relationship, we have to have some basic knowledge of geography of our area. Boita Bandhana is celebrated when the trade winds move from our east coast towards Thailand, that is towards Southeast Asia. After certain time, when the earth rotates in its axis, the direction of the wind changes, it reverses. So exactly during those days, they celebrate Loi Krotang in Thailand. What does this mean? This is a reminiscent of our ancient Indian traders who used to navigate their small boats using the trade winds. They used to start from eastern coast of India, maybe even in Oriya, Andhra, Telangana, these places. They used to visit all these countries, maritime countries, which I have mentioned earlier in Southeast Asia. And maybe after 4 or 5 months. And actually, all these festivals, they are related with agriculture also. If we go deeply, we can understand. It's a celebration with agricultural aspects also. So by the time the wind takes the reverse direction, they leave those places and come back to their homeland. That reminiscent is even kept today in these festivals. So, by just one introduction, we can understand not only the cultural and religious aspect, but there is also much of science in it. So, this relates to the ancient period. Coming on to modern period, we have a study called as area studies. Area studies was actually it actually began in Germany during 19th century, but it was not that much popular at that time. What is area study? Area study is an interdisciplinary study. It studies history, culture, language, politics of an area. It became famous only after Second World War. Once during, once after Second World War, it became famous in America because America thought of doing trade with various other countries, including India. Before entering those countries, it tried to understand the history, culture, language of that particular place so that they could mend their system and they could capture over the markets here. And that led to the study called as a that led to this interdisciplinary study, and it became what we today term as area studies. Now, area studies is very much popular. It is popular even in India after 1990s, that is globalization. So, these area studies need Indian knowledge system. As you know, India is the biggest market, and India is the only place where there is no stagnation nowadays. And naturally, multinational companies who try to enter India try to hire people who have the knowledge of Indian knowledge system. So with these two different examples, what I have done here is I try to introduce you to this subject differently. Next slide, ma'am. We will use the traditional method also. Within 2 to 3 minutes, we will try to understand what Indian knowledge system is. It is a oldest and the most comprehensive system that is found anywhere in the world. When we check its roots, it goes back to thousands of years earlier. What does it encompass? It encompasses various subjects. It encompasses various disciplines, and these disciplines are interrelated. It may be philosophy, it may be spirituality, it may be science, it may be maths, it may be medicine, and it has a vast repository of knowledge. Each interdisciplinary subject are not just simply subject. It has a repository. It's not newly founded out maybe in 19th or 20th century. The tradition is still continuing. It has been built upon, and it consists of vast repository of knowledge, vast repository of wisdom, and it is embedded in our practices that which we use daily and which we usually don't know also. We blindly follow the practice, but we may not be knowing the meaning all the time. I don't say that everybody doesn't know it. There are various levels of meaning. We may be knowing one or two levels of the meaning, but as I have given in the example, cultural religious aspects are known commonly, but trade winds or something which relates to business may not be easily graspable. So this Indian knowledge system has is that kind of repository which is built upon over time, and it has been developed and passed through generations. And I have used the word called as Greater India. That is why Greater India is not the India, modern Indian map that we find. Whatever countries, whatever maritime countries which I had explained in my previous slide, particularly in Southeast Asia, were all the part of Greater India earlier. That is why I have specifically used the term Greater India over there. That is passed through generation, maybe in oral tradition, but it is passed from one generation to other, and it's still maintained. That is why later on, somewhere in the middle, I will be referring that India is the only country where continuous living civilization is found. And then in the second this thing, I've given the examples: mathematics, science, technology, Ayurveda, and other things. And as I have said, this vast repository is a set of data. It is not simply, as I've said earlier, it is built upon. So it's a data set for us. I remember one particular American, what you call it, as an American management guru by name Edward Deming. He simply says one simple sentence: we trust in God, but bring data before me. Without data, I'm not going to accept anything. We trust in God is their constitutional sentence, and it is even found on dollar notes, as we know very well. They trust in God, but they insist on data. So what I am going to say to you is IKS is such a set of data which can be easily relied upon, which is very trustworthy and which can be easily relied upon. And IKS is known for its holistic approach. It's a holistic approach. It's not a separate disciplinary asset. All these disciplines are interconnected, and it is for the welfare of not only individual but society as a whole. This is the thing which is specialized in India. Uh, we not think of individual. We don't usually think of individuals. Veda, Upanishads, Mahabharata, everything talk of society as a whole. We use a particular word in Sanskrit called as samashti prajna. Whatever we do, it is for the society, not for us. What we think is, if the society is good, then we will be also in a good position. So, for us to grow, the society has to grow. This is the basic definition of modern globalization. But we had encompassed it, we had applied it very early in our system. Okay. Next slide, please, ma'am. So here I have given you the various topics. It is not actually a full list, but the common things that we usually interact while we do our chorus in our daily life. So I don't want to read those things, but out of this one, for me, time don't permits to explain all the things. I have targeted one or two amongst this one to give you a detailed briefing on that particular this thing. So these are some of the topics which are very interesting in IKS. Next slide, ma'am. Okay. Now coming on to the issues with IKS. As I have told you, See, all these 20 minutes which I talked to you, we thought of greatness of the system, greatness of the subject that we are going to discuss. Then one simple question arises in our mind. If the subject which we are discussing is so great, then why it is not popular? So to understand that particular issue, we have to know what were the hindrances that IKS faced, not only during ancient period, but also even today, it is facing certain issues. So I have mentioned one or two issues that IKS is suffering. The one is that it is lack of institutional support, recognition, and funding. That is now being changed after the new NEB system. Now, for the first time, we are getting funding, and if really the projects are very good, funding is available for IKS. But at the same time, we have to keep in our mind that anything cannot become IKS. That is an issue with us. We overstep sometime and we think that everything is IKS. So if we use scientific method and if we go on slowly, definitely definitely institutional support can be had, but institutional support is not available for Ayurveda and yoga as it is very much popular in India. Had it been with the institutional support, it would have crossed its limits. That is what I wanted to tell you. That is why one of the issues that I have identified is the institutional support. And the second one is lack of awareness. This lack of awareness has various stages. We ourselves, the practitioners, we don't know sometimes that IKS is such an important issue, and naturally our rulers don't give much importance to IKS awareness. And so I have mentioned that lack of awareness is also one of the issues with IKS. For the third issue, which I have mentioned here, is disconnection. That is, it clearly says that modern scientific approach or modern scientific paradigms have not been used. This is because starting from 19th century, science is dominated by Europeans, Westerners. We will use the word, we will use the term Westerners. It has been dominated by Westerners, and naturally they have certain ideology which is not comparable with IKS. And I don't deny that IKS is not a scientific thing. We have our own system, but the issue is our scientific system is not being accepted by them. Pratyaksha, Pramana. Nowadays, we are hearing these words, but it was common during earlier days. That is what science also says, but they don't accept it. They say that it's a vague method and this cannot be accepted while acknowledging IKS. So I have mentioned that one. So that is the disconnect of lack of integration with modern systems, modern paradigms. It cannot be integrated. IKS cannot be integrated according to them. And therefore, this is one of the issues with IKS. And always we are overshadowed by Western thought. Our education system is being controlled by this Western influence. We always talk of feminism, we always talk of Orientalism, postmodernism, feudalism. All these are not applicable to India. It's a European concept, and let them use it and let them apply it for their history. The one example which I want to give is Orientalism. We historians, we talk of Orientalism a lot. During it emerged somewhere in France during 1970s, but during 1990s it was in its peak, Orientalism. Now the coin has inverted, now it has changed. Those who were behind this Orientalism earlier are now criticizing it, and they say that Orientalism is not a concept that can be applied to any Oriental countries, India, China, Japan. So now the things are being changed. It was propagated by Westerners. Now it is being challenged by Westerners. We are also a part of it, but the challenge is very severe from Westerners themselves. Now they are realizing their folly, and this has to happen in all the other fields. I was mentioning feminism, I was mentioning postmodernism, modernism, and this happens. And once world accepts our system, IKS will definitely go into shine. Okay, ma'am. Next slide. So, by halfway stage, we are now in the halfway stage. Now, what I am going to do is I will tell you how IKS transmitted during ancient times. This is a small incident. I refer to a word called as Arabia here. This Arabia is no way connected with modern Saudi Arabia, but modern Saudi Arabia was a part of that Arabia. It was much bigger than modern Saudi Arabia. That is the first thing that we have to keep in our mind. And second thing which I wish to say during this example is I use a general word called as Central Asia, which consisted of Arabia, Arabian Peninsula, Iran, Iraq, and Turkey. Only these four countries I'm talking of. So these four countries, out of these four countries, Arabia had a good contact with India. It was because of their geography. Whenever we remember Arabia during modern days, we think of petrodollars, we think of oil wealth. All these are modern concepts. I'm talking of ancient Arabia, maybe between first, second, third, and sixth centuries. And one more thing, it is pre-Islamic Arabia. I'm referring to pre-Islamic Arabia. So during those days, Arabia was entirely dependent on India for their food needs because they did not have agriculture. So naturally, it was quite natural for them to be dependent. They had only two things. One is date, the other one is palm fruit through which this palm oil is produced nowadays. So using these two things, a race cannot survive, and naturally they were dependent on India. India was a neighboring country, and they were dependent on India for their daily needs. This created a peculiar situation. They, Arabs, knew nook and corner of India than Indians. They had better knowledge of India than Indians. And the ancient texts suggest that they used to stay in India for nearly 6 months in a year. And the other 6 months was used for travel. And they knew nook and corner of India. And the geography of that particular Arabia made them to migrate first at the beginning, and later on this migration led them to Arabians being converted as business people. Now, because of this nature, they got in contact with Europeans. So they used to leave Arabia, come to India, stay here for some time, collect a lot of items, go back to their place, dump some part of it to their family, and then proceed further towards Turkey so that they could do business with Europeans, Westerners or Europeans. So in this whole process, what did they do is they not only carried Indian spices and other things to all these places, they also were the carriers for Indian knowledge system. Then why I am taking this example over here, then by hearing just these things, we assume that we have to be thankful to Arabs for propagating their knowledge. Definitely, we are thankful to them. I'm not saying that one. But while propagating this particular knowledge system, they did a small mischief in the middle. What they did is, they, instead of saying that they acquired this knowledge from India, they branded it as the Arabic knowledge. This was accepted by Europeans since many years, but now with the growth of modern science and technology, now even Westerners are understanding that it is not the knowledge of Arabs, but Arabs were just carriers of that particular knowledge, and the knowledge belongs to India. Now, at last, at the end of 20th century, we are being recognized as the holder of this particular knowledge. This is how our knowledge was transmitted during ancient times, but with the arrival of textbooks and with the later with the arrival of with the arrival of printing technology, sorry, it's not textbooks, with the arrival of printing technology and later with the arrival of Europeans, the second wave of Indian knowledge got transmitted over to Western district. So this is the method through which Indian knowledge system got transmitted to Westerners. This made them curious, and this later on had bad effects also. Naturally, it was invaded and colonized by Europeans. Okay, next slide, ma'am. After this, the actual thing happened, which I have given now under the title called as misconstructed wisdom. This wisdom was misconstructed later on. This is what I want to explain in this thing. What is misconstructed wisdom? It is inaccurate explanation or inaccurate interpretation or inaccurate report of essential, which denotes misunderstanding or maybe a faulty construction of an idea. That's important for me. It's a faulty construction. This is what Arabs and Europeans did for us. How could we understand that the Indian knowledge system was falsely constructed? That can be illustrated by using various examples. At the beginning, I have given the examples of Al-Biruni. As you know, he is the author for the book called as Kitabul Hind, which was written in 1030. He accompanied India. He was a very famous scholar, an Iranian scholar. He accompanied Muhammad Ghazni to India. But his book, though has some good information on Indian knowledge system, has a dangerous sentence too. What does it say? It says that India lacks curiosity about history and religion. This is the sentence which is misconstructed and what I want to tell it to you. He gives an example. He goes to a Pandit or he goes to a person and he asks what is the Indian history. So when he asks the Pandit, he just simply, instead of revealing Indian history, he started storytelling. This is what is recorded by Al-Biruni. Al-Biruni says that when Indians are asked, instead of specifically, scientifically telling the history of India, they start storytelling. And that sentence is even used today to misconstruct our wisdom. Whether it's a Westerner, whether it is an European, they don't want to accept India as knowledge capital. And naturally, they try to use the scientific methods and tweak the wisdom. So here they get a very good sentence. The Indians are deficient in history. Indians are deficient in religion. So this is what has happened all these days. The same situation was even during 18th century. I've taken the example of William Jones. Sir William Jones was in Calcutta. He was the Supreme Court judge appointed by East India Company. I'm mentioning specifically his job because a Supreme Court judge means the first Supreme Court was established in Calcutta in 1856. So naturally, he should be a very well organized, very well thought, very well knowledgeable person. He did a good thing. He translated Shakuntala and it was very well accepted in Europe. Abhignana Shakuntala, the drama by Kalidasa, the famous drama by Kalidasa. It was very well accepted by Europeans. And for propagation of Indian knowledge, he even established Asiatic Society, where only Indian scholars were not allowed at the beginning, only European scholars were allowed. And most of them were East India Company employees, and they started digging out Indian history. But what did they misconstruct here? They misconstructed the Indian history suiting their needs. Why they wanted history to suit their needs? I will tell you. See, England was under constitutional monarchy, and we have heard of various charter acts which used to give permission for Europeans to continue their trade, particularly English East India Company to continue their trade. For that, they were supposed to go in front of Parliament for every 20 years. European citizens were more enlightened than modern Indian citizens, though the communication via media was very less during those days. They had their own media. We come across various pamphlets, we come across various books, we come across various travelogues, which demonstrated that East India Company was not acting according to the charter that was sent or given to them and was against the purpose of trade. That is, it was interfering within the local politics. It was targeting Indians. All these things were very well known to Europeans. That's why I've used the word called as enlightened citizens over there. So citizens actually opposed these charter acts, and they insisted that the permission be withdrawn so that East India Company comes back. Their main grudge was East India Company should remain only as a trading company instead of always engaging in either wars or interference within the local community. This was their major grudge. So, using Indian knowledge system, IKS, the wisdom that was present traditionally in India, and misconstructing it in Europe, they brought out this providence theory. What is providence theory says? Providence theory says that their God, that is the God for English people, have made white people to rule the black people, to improve the black people. This is what, using our own things, they constructed this providence theory. And what they do is they continue to rule India. So again, two different examples have presented in two different timelines, but the situation is one and the same. Though there is a difference of around 500 years in the middle, the situation is one and the same. And this is how our Indian knowledge system was misused and targeted Indians. What was the grudge of modern Europeans? See, before they arrived to India, these Europeans had modern knowledge, they had modern system of education, everything they had, but they were suffering from certain defects which I have mentioned here. The major issue was with the religious belief of Europeans. The Christian beliefs did not always align with the Hindu belief. This is with, I'm not talking of religion, I'm talking of chronology. Indian chronology had a very ancient past, but the Christian chronology was not that much ancient when compared to Indian chronology. And they were always declaring themselves as superior being. They could not digest Indian knowledge system or Indians as superior. So they had the problems with chronology. So they adjusted using Indian knowledge system. They adjusted. This was the same William Jones who identified Sandrakotas with Chandragupta Maurya. The modern researchers has clearly proved that there is nearly 800 years difference between Sandrakotas and Chandragupta. And William Jones misused this. He used the Indian knowledge system and he proved that Sandrakotas is same as Chandragupta. So naturally, we lost around 800 years of our history. And I mentioned Upanishads and Puranas at the beginning. It contains the maximum number of historical events present, which was present in ancient India. For example, there was a very big kingdom called the Shatavahana Empire, which ruled South India, and they were contemporaries to Maurya. No mention is made anywhere with regards to Shatavahanas. We get all the information of Shatavahanas only in Puranas. So, but to understand Shatavahanas, we have to study Puranas. But what these Europeans have done, they have kept the Puranas separately, saying that it's not historical text. It is not either historical text or nor a religious text. So they are not, they did not allow us. Okay, nowadays, if we come to the last sentence, we can understand. Nowadays, we find the emergence of Indian Indologists. I have given various names. Most of you are familiar with these names. And what these Indian Indologists are doing, they are trying to clear this misconstructed wisdom and present the real picture. Okay, next slide, ma'am. Next slide, please. Now, we talk of geography. Geography is an important part. As I have told you the subjects, here I have mentioned the geography. Indians were very superior in their geographical knowledge. That is why I have used this opportunity to introduce you to the geographical knowledge of Indians. Kalidasa had the knowledge of Transoxania. Transoxania is Central Asia. Kalidasa had this knowledge and he clearly mentions Transoxania in his Krutis. Similarly, he mentions Cambodia. Cambodia means modern day Iran. So, Indians and Meghaduta, there is a very famous book by one Mr. Vaidya, General Vaidya. He has identified all the geographical places that has been mentioned in Meghaduta. Similarly, places mentioned in Ramayana and Mahabharata are identified. Okay, there are certain issues. Some modern Indologists are claiming that this Sri Lanka is different and the Sri Lanka of Ramayana is different, but definitely we have certain clues. So, ancient Indians have left a corpus of data where the Bharatavarsha, they actually use the word Bharatavarsha instead of geography, where the Bharatavarsha is very clearly mentioned. And we knew that word was round, Gola. That's why the word Bhugola, geography, has come from that Sanskrit word itself. But the whole world came to know it only after 15th century. Surya Siddhanta, had there been any book like Surya Siddhanta in modern day, he could have been awarded Nobel Prize immediately. It is that much important and it refers to the word Bhugola. But we knew what Bhugola is, but they, Europeans, Westerners, they could understand what Bhugola is only after 16th century. Here, I quote a Chinese tradition. It's a old Chinese tradition because modern China is influenced by Europeans. I'm talking of old Chinese tradition. See, they clearly say that India is the land of wise people. They knew that Indians are full of wise people and they have innumerable holy books. That's why Huyen Sang, Itzing, all people, they came over here. They wanted to translate Indian books in Indian after learning Indian knowledge. That's why they came over here. But the important aspect which I want to stress here is India has not only innumerable holy books, they have innumerable scientific books too. And they have identified, Chinese have identified that why scientific books are produced in India. It is because of the favorable geographical position. Geography makes man. This is a famous sentence each and everybody knows. This is proved in our ancient knowledge system. Because of our familiar geography, we could prove, we could not only prove, we could bring out various scientific books. We had books for Ashwa Ayurveda, Hasta means elephant. Elephant Ayurveda was different category. We had books. Hasta Ayurveda is that one. Ashwa Ayurveda for horses, because horses was considered an important instrument. So I just gave you two examples during Gupta age where we find the scientific books written on a specific subject. Even today, writing such a book is very difficult, but we had achieved it using our Indian knowledge system. So, ancient Indians were very much familiar with the geography of the not only India but also of the world. Okay, next slide now. Now we'll go to next slide, Artha Shastra. We'll jump this one because it takes a lot of time. Artha Shastra, yes. Everybody know what is the content of Artha Shastra. Everybody knows how Arthashastra was discovered during modern day. We had the knowledge that we had a book, but nobody knew where it was found. Later on, it was recovered in Mysore. There is a library called as Oriental Institute, where a curator by name Shama Shastri, who discovered it, and he learned the language because it was in Modi Sanskrit. He knew Sanskrit, but it was in an ancient, slightly ancient Sanskrit called as Modi Sanskrit. He somewhere went to Tanjavur to learn it, and later on we could find another copy in Tanjavur library also. And he was very well versed in English. And by 1917, I think 1909 or 1917, we could get the English translation of Oriental Library. Sorry, Arthashastra, and Oriental Library played a very, even today it's surviving, that Oriental Library is surviving in Mysore. Okay. Now, the important point, the relationship between Arthashastra and modern day politics is Chanakya had identified the gunas, that is the character the king should have. Now, we don't have kings, but we have rulers. The king should have, so that the country progresses. So he gives a circle wherein king is connected with his administration by using dharma. Dharma is ethics. Artha. Artha, as we know, is money. That circle has various dimensions. Dharma, artha, right governance. That is very much important. Modern day businesses, for example, Infosys is famous for its governance policies. Many companies excel in governance policies. When the governance policies excel, we clearly say that the company is very good. So this was mentioned in Arthashastra, and that governance should be through the hands of this ethical king. And above all, what does he say with regards to king? That's modern ruler is inner restraint. The king should be inner restraint. He should be very well educated. He should be very well trained, and he should continue his reading even after assuming power. Study does not stop once he comes to power. He should continue reading. He should continue imbibing new ideas. And at the same time, economics should be taught to him every day. Without economics, you cannot survive. You cannot rule a country. So he insists on ethical righteousness. He insists on right governance. He insists on restraint. Along with that, the knowledge of economics is important. So this is the importance of Arthashastra. Though we don't find kings here, modern day politicians may simply follow it, but nobody does it. That is a different question altogether. But why I have brought Arthashastra over here is the propagation of that knowledge which was done during ancient time is relevant even today to the modern 20th century. So let us hope that Arthashastra, as it has been texts in various foreign universities, let us hope that our children too learn Arthashastra in near future. Okay, we'll go to the next slide. Astronomy, as you know, this astronomy, we were very famous, and we were not Arabs, to be specific. We acknowledged during 5th century when Varahi Mihira comes, we were earlier at the beginning. Actually, the period of astronomy starts with Indus Valley civilization. We have reminiscence of astronomical instruments in Indus Valley excavations. But later on, we were influenced by Romans and Greeks. We have clearly acknowledged it during 5th century. Pancha Siddhantika, out of 5 Siddhantas which were found in India, Varahi Mihira clearly states that we were influenced by Romans. We have acknowledged it. Acknowledgement is a part of modern day writing too. We know that one. We have done it. We did not copy blindly what Arabs did. We acknowledged it, but we developed it later on. So here I have just the mention of 5th century, particularly during Gupta period. It refers to Aryabhatta, his works, Aryabhatiyam. Okay, that is considered as pinnacle of astronomical knowledge. What does Aryabhatta refer in his books? He refers to unit of time, methods for determining positions of the planet, cause of day and night, rotation of the earth, revolution of the earth. Everything is mentioned in Aryabhatiyam. Okay, then decimal system. He talks of decimal system. Modern day computer system will not be possible without decimal system. Pi value that has been propagated nowadays, but it was earlier said to us by Pingala. Zero, zero was earlier, as I said earlier, was a Arabic contribution, but now we have got a proof somewhere near Himachal Pradesh in a temple. We have an inscription which clearly shows that zero was there in India. So, almanac we use even today. That is the continuity of the civilization. That is nothing but the calculation and movement of planetary from one place to another. And mention is also made up of Brahmagupta over here. He was a famous mathematician. All these are interrelated. IKS, as I have told earlier, though we are talking of astronomy, astrology and mathematics are integral part of astronomy. Therefore, Aryabhatiyam comes over there. Brahmagupta comes here. Bhaskaracharya, Leelavati, the famous author of Leelavati, comes here. He was very specific in mathematics, and modern day mathematics owes a lot to Bhaskaracharya. So, though I'm reading it, we can clearly understand that the huge contribution of Indians towards IKS. Madam, we will go to the last stage over here. Okay, just I will jump temple architecture, but we will stay for Ayurveda for a minute. See, here I want to share only one incident. We know the speciality of Ayurveda. Ayurveda did that, Ayurveda did this. All these things are common. But recently, an incident happened during COVID. A doctor, an Afghan doctor, I'm talking of an Afghan doctor. I will just tell his name within a minute. I may noted it down somewhere. Just a minute. Nasheem H. Naqvi. He is a practicing doctor somewhere in England. As he had vacation, he visited Afghanistan, and since it was COVID period, he simply was roaming in a exhibition somewhere in Afghanistan, which government controlled one. There, for his this thing, he could find nearly 50 instruments that was mentioned in Ayurvedic texts. Sushruta, particularly Sushruta had mentioned those instruments. 14 types of various bandages he could find. All that were collected and were kept safely, but nobody knew what it was. So he could find 14 varieties of bandages, various antiseptics that were available during those days, various instruments, particularly made up of steel and other materials, which was used for operations. And later on, he went to England and wrote a very huge article on this one. That proves that Ayurveda is an ancient science and it's a part of our ancient Indian knowledge system. Okay, we'll go to the last stage, ma'am, because we are out of time. Madam. Okay, yeah, we'll stop here for just a minute. And in contribution of science, this is, no, we'll go to the next slide. Here, in the same place, I have put this one here. This is how tooth decay was, what you call it as, repaired during ancient period. This is the actual photo of the actual instrument that is kept in Afghan museum, but which was not identified by other scholars. He could identify it. The same methodology is used using modern day instruments. for removing tooth decay, and this photo was acquired by me from the article which was written by the Dr. Nakvi. Okay, now we will go to the conclusion. So I think it was possible for me. It was difficult as I have claimed it in my disclaimer at the beginning. It's a very huge subject, and within short stipulated time, it's not possible. But what I have done is that's why I have used certain examples to show that Indian knowledge system is an integral part of our ancient system, and it can be used also as a contemporary knowledge. So this clearly proves that India was in forefront of advancing various disciplines. At the beginning, I could not read it, but I had showed you clearly the interdisciplinary nature of this particular subject. So that much type of disciplines was developed in India during ancient times. And now, as we know, we are globally being recognized for certain two important things, Ayurveda and this one, yoga, that has been now in forefront, and hope let us hope that all the other interdisciplines which I had shown earlier to occupy the same place. Thank you for your patience hearing. I welcome your questions.